the best way to live your life is to do etre, to be, to just be present in the moment and experience your feelings and experience the world around you. It's a little deep. Hi, guys, and welcome back to the Mind, Body, Planet podcast. So happy you've made it back for our second episode of 2024. I am a little bit under the weather. I am recovering. I had a cold, so my voice might be a little bit raspier than normal, or maybe you can't even tell. Maybe it's just in my head. Who knows? But just wanted to give a heads up on that one. Today's episode is something that I've been doing a lot of research in because I noticed as I was reflecting on my 2023, my work life balance was just not great. I was told by many people that I needed to do a lot more self care. I needed to find a lot more balance. And so obviously I rolled my eyes at all those people and was like, whatever. But then upon further reflection, I was like, okay, there's some truth there. I do need to find a little bit of balance. And if I'm going to do a little bit of growth this year, I need to figure it out. So that's going to be today's topic. I figured I was already doing the research, so I might as well share my findings with everyone else as well. Before we hop into the topic of today, let's start with the week's favorites. I've got two. Okay, number one is the Percy Jackson series that's on Disney Plus. If you are a fantasy reader, the Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief books were something that I freaking loved reading when I was in like middle school / high school. And then there was a movie that came out, but I don't feel like special effects was really like where it needed to be for that movie at that moment in time. But now it's become a TV show and I love it. I love it so much. There's only like a few episodes in now at this point. They haven't finished season 1 yet. However, everything's really amazing. It's like really fun. My fiance and I have been watching it and I highly recommend. It's fun to get immersed in a little fantasy world, you know? Okay, number 2 is I've been loving homemade dupes. A dupe of popular foods. For example, I love the Starbucks spinach and feta egg white wrap, but I think a lot of people are not trying to purchase from Starbucks right now. And I was like, okay, how can I make this at home? Because I'm really craving it. So I've been making the spinach feta egg white wrap dupe for brekkie. And it tastes pretty close, I don't think I have the recipe down to a T, but it's pretty dang close, and I love that it's a healthy recipe too. So this is your sign. This is your reminder that if you really love a certain food product, you can probably from a restaurant or whatever, you can probably Google the recipe and make something that tastes pretty dang close. Okay, now onto the work-life balance and how we can all tackle work-life balance a little bit better. I've done a lot of research on this, and it's something that I've been really struggling with lately. And so I wanted to use this episode as a way to really share that information with you guys. Like, again, like I said, in 2023, I spent a lot of time working, a lot of time just thinking about work. Even when I had closed my computer, it was like my brain would never shut off. And I realized it was burning me out. I was feeling extremely overwhelmed. I was feeling like, man, it's my fault that I can't reach these goals of mine because I'm not working enough. And I think in retrospect, maybe what would have done me better is if I were to step back and actually recharge and come back with a better feeling and a better, zeal and like zest for like working. And I did take off the last couple of weeks. As you know, there wasn't a podcast for 2-3 weeks or so. But I decided that 2024 is going to be our year of growth and balance, and with that, a healthy work life balance. What is work life balance? I think starting off, I think work life balance is going to be a little bit different for everybody, right? Like, this is a kind of an evolving concept because what might work for one person may not work for another person. But generally speaking, a work life balance would be finding a way to participate in your career and like be present in your career while also being present at home and in your life and your activities and your hobbies and your families if you have a family of your own. I think the biggest way that I've looked at sort of this, work-life balance is these two words, and they're French words, so stick with me here. But when I was learning French, there are two words that are very similar, and we don't have the same differentiator in the English language. So the first word is faire, and the second word is etre. It's a very American way to say those words, but they're both verbs. Faire means to do or to make, and etre means to be. And I think that that differentiator there is something that I keep in mind a lot. In fact, I have a sticky note on my computer right over yonder over there that says etre because it's a good reminder that living life is not fair to do or to make. You don't have to do everything. You don't have to make everything to live a life. The best way to live your life is to do etre, to be, to just be present in the moment and experience your feelings and experience the world around you. It's a little deep, but I feel like this really is such a thing I think about when I think about work life balance because I don't want to be on this planet to constantly feel like I am living to work. I want to create a life where it feels like I'm working to live. I'm working to be able to provide for my life that I want to live, and be happy with that and not get stressed out when I'm like, oh no, I have to work tomorrow. Or man, I've really fallen flat on a certain due date that I wanted to do. I think the other thing that people think about when it comes to a work life balance is that it has to come from management. Like your boss has to basically grant you a work life permission, work life balance permission. And I think that's also a very common misconception as well. Because while I do feel like there are some managers out there, some bosses out there that may make it a little bit harder to find the balance, I think this is kind of an internal decision that we have to come to. We have to be able to allow ourselves to step away from work and recharge and be present in our actual lives. So, moving on from that, I was researching how can we improve our general work-life balance? Like what are steps we can do to make it better, to feel like we have more control over it because like I said, it's not something that your boss grants permission for you. You have to basically decide, okay, I need to change what I'm doing here because this is not a great balance for me. And like I said, it's an individual journey and individual process. So not everyone's going to have the same sort of work life balance. So I think the first thing that we can do to improve our general work life balance is just accept that there's not a perfect work life balance. Like I said, it's an individual journey. You don't have to strive for a perfect schedule. Like if you were to like write down your ideal day or like write down your like perfect situation for your work day, like what that would look like. Not every day is going to look like that, right? Every day is going to be a little bit different. Every day is going to be a little unique depending on what you're working on at work, how hefty the workflow is right now, or if you have nothing to do at work right now, every day is going to be different. So I don't think you have to strive for this perfect or ideal schedule. I think you just have to strive for a realistic one. So some days you might focus more on work, and other days you might have something come up, or you're just tired, or you're sick, and you may have more time and energy to pursue your hobbies or spend time with your family and other loved ones and friends. Balance repeated over and over again is just really it's not something you can achieve overnight, unfortunately. And I wish, man, like I wish I could just find it. I wish I could just be like, okay, I've got this routine, okay, I've got it, like and never fall back into the old patterns that I was in. But truly balance is achieved over time. And each day you gotta determine what is the best balance for you. So it's kind of fluid. There's a flow to it, kind of in the same way that many of us our work schedules are. We have busy seasons and we have slow seasons. And I think that that's kind of something you have to keep in mind when it comes to correcting and improving your work life balance. I found this really interesting article. It's from the Harvard Business Review, and I'm going to link it in the show notes for everyone. And this is kind of where they describe it as work life balance as a cycle, not an achievement. And I think in my head, before reading this, I thought of work life balance as an achievement, like something that you just reach it one day and you're like, yes, like I'm here and I am great. And I would never have to go back to being burnt out ever again. And this really opened my eyes that it's not that way at all. It's actually a cycle. And in the article, it even lays out that when you're feeling overwhelmed, stressed, or even burnt out, you got to take a step back and you got to denormalize those feelings because when we're in the thick of it, our stress will affect other areas of our life. It's not normal. Like it's not normal for stress to reach stress from work specifically to reach other aspects of our life. So, understanding and recognizing that is going to be the first step to being able to move forward and create a better balance. So, again, I will link that Harvard Business Review article in the show notes if you want to read through the whole thing, because I find it very interesting. So, number one, our first step is that we need to accept that there's no perfect work life balance. Number two is we got to write down our goals and priorities. This is going to be both personal and professional, and you got to stick to them because that's the only way that you're going to be able to really achieve this balance. We don't know what we want unless we think about it. No one can tell you that this is the right path for you, this is the right career for you, this is the right exercise routine for you, or the right family lifestyle for you, the right house for you. No one can describe that or tell you what you want. It's an individual thing. You have to be able to reflect and be like, okay, in a perfect world, I want X, Y, and Z things. And so that's why at this point, like once you realize that your work life balance is really like off, you have to be able to set goals and prioritize what is important to you. So, personally and professionally. If professionally you want to get a promotion, but personally you also want to start a family, or you want to buy a house, or you want to adopt a dog, whatever the stage of life you're in, you have to be able to write down both of them because sometimes you have to find the balance between the two. And if you really want the promotion, but in order to get the promotion, you got to work overtime and you're not in a situation where you can work overtime, you got to find the middle ground there to be able to try and be able to do both. A few things that can help with that is allowing yourself to unplug after work hours. Obviously, easier said than done. But I think this really is helpful if you have like a work phone or a work computer, being able to really put that away. And I also feel like this is a really good time, like when you're goal setting and you're prioritizing what's most important for you, to ask yourself the questions like, are there components of your job that you want to see changed? And then how much time do you want to spend with your family or on your hobbies? And I think it's important for me to also note this. This is a very research heavy episode. You're welcome. There is an article from Forbes, and I'm going to just quote it because I find it very fascinating, okay? Knowledge work depends on optimal brain function, and optimal brain function depends on physical and emotional well being. We can't get a fresh perspective from something we never step away from. Stepping away from work allows the opportunity to engage in activities that improve our brain function, such as sleep, exercise, spiritual practices, and time with family and friends. And I'll link that article in the show notes as well for anybody who wants to read the full one. So, if anything, I hope that quote is just a good reminder that sometimes the best thing you could do for your job, even if you are in a situation where you feel like you can't step away, is to do the opposite. You got to step away. I want to move in to working from home specifically on this one as well because I work from home and every day is an adventure. Just kidding. Every day I go to my office and I sit down and every day's a little bit different, but there's a whole lack of community when it comes to working from home. And I know I'm not the only one who thinks this. I'm not the only one who's experiencing this. When we work from home, you're kind of isolated more and it takes more effort to have human interactions on the day-to-day basis, especially with COVID. I know we're kind of moving out of a lot of the COVID protocols, but this was something that a lot of people experienced when we were in lockdown and everyone had to, move to working from home and go to Microsoft Teams or Zoom calls in order to see their colleagues then. So there's this theory that in life you should really have three places. The first place is your home, the second place is your workplace, and the third place is like a happy place or like just a neutral place. And so for some people, that might be the library. If you're in college, it could be maybe campus. If you live in the city, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's your gym. When you think about this theory, the conversation around here is that we just have less third places that are free to go to than we used to have. And that's kind of a different conversation here. And maybe we can do a future episode on that. When you work from home, your first and second places then become merged. So, how do you really create a good work life balance when you work where you sleep? can you really get a good night's sleep if your computer's right next to your bed, you know? Like, are you always gonna be feeling the urge to open up your work computer and respond to emails even when it's midnight and nobody else is online? A recent study that was reported in Forbes, again, I'll link that one in the show notes for anybody who wants to listen. The study found that workers who worked from home 100% of the time were 20% happier because they're home on average than those who did not have the ability to work from home. And that study also found a strong correlation between work happiness and overall happiness. Another study, which I'll link, found that people who have the opportunity to work remotely at least monthly are 24% more likely to feel happy and productive in their roles. And I think a big piece of this is because there's a lot of convenience. In a time where people were used to long commutes in order to get to work, they no longer have to do that. They just roll out of bed, take the minute and a half it takes to get to their office, open up their computer, and suddenly they're there. So it leaves more time to be able to spend time with your family, to do laundry in between meetings, and to feel like you're being more productive around your house that you used to not have. However, this brings me to another point that I found. Balance and convenience are not the same. And I feel like we get confused in the two of them, truly. Balance being work life balance, having a personal life versus a professional life, and then the convenience of combining your first and second places so you can do your professional life while also doing your personal life. They're just not the same. And according to the Forbes article and research study, many times people confuse the ability to work from home as better work life balance, but in reality, it's just a convenience. And there have been studies that show people who work from home often work more hours than their counterparts who go into the office every day. And I find this article so fascinating because I believe it. When I worked in an office, I was able to just leave the office and felt no obligation because I was like, okay, I got to drive home, got to cook dinner. I felt no obligation to do any work outside of working hours. However, when I switched to working from home and not having to go into an office every day, I felt the need that was because I was home and because I wasn't in the office that I needed to contribute more and that I needed to work more. But with that, there was a 2014 study. This is by John Pincavel of Stanford. Again, I will link this. That showed that productivity per hour declines around 50 hours a week. So if it's common to work a 40-hour work week, but you work from home, so you're now working 20% more, and you're now over the 50 hours a week, your productivity is actually down. Working more than 55 hours a week is absolutely pointless because you're not going to get any more work done than if you were to work 40 hours a week. And there's another study around time management by an author. Her name is Laura Vanderkam. That study shows that really 38 hours of work per week is like your sweet spot. That's where you're going to have happiest employees. That's where you're going to have the happiest, most productive time. If your work life balance is that the more work you do, the better work you're going to produce, I feel like these studies really disprove that. And that really the best thing that you can do is first of all, you got to step away. Like we were just talking about, you just got to step away, spend time with family and friends, and maybe that you'll have your aha moment that you were trying to problem solve when you were just staring at your computer blankly. And really, 38 hours of work a week is the sweet spot. That's your sweet spot of where you feel productive, you get good work done, and you feel creative enough to problem solve and make a better work environment for you and your teammates and your colleagues. How much sitting is too much sitting? Something I think this goes corporate world and work from home. You sit a lot. And I did find this is kind of just like I don't know if it's a fun fact. I'm not sure I'm called a fun fact, but just kind of like a little side note here. You should really only be sitting for like an hour max. You got to stand up. You got to get a standing desk. You should take a short walk every 45 minutes. If you have a meeting call, take it while you're on a walk in your neighborhood. So, how can you remember to stand more? You can set a timer on your phone every hour to get up, stretch. The other thing you can do here is when it's lunchtime, or if you like get a lot of snacks or get a like extra coffee in the afternoon, make sure that you don't do that at your desk. Go to the water cooler if you're in an office, go to the kitchen if you're working from home. use that as a time to like, get outside or like do something completely different than sitting at your desk. That's the other thought there. And the other thing I just want to remind everyone, it's really important to stay connected and really avoid isolation. So the more you work from home, obviously you're not going out as much. And so you're just staying home all day. It's really, really important that you get out and you don't do all this isolation. There's a recent research that shows that there's a 50% increased risk of dementia from self isolation. So you got to learn to mix your work with a sprinkle of social interaction. I think that gives a nice perspective on work life balance as well. And just being able to create, work friendships. Because they also say some of the best ideas come when you're just chatting normally and there's not the pressure of trying to solve a certain problem. You might just come up with it on your own when you're talking to one of your colleagues. You never know, or your friends. That's pretty much what I found on creating a good work life balance. I hope you're able to listen to this episode and you're able to see it in the same way that I have. And maybe, this was your moment of feeling like, okay, I think I understand work life balance a little bit better now. Or maybe, like I said, it's a cycle, it's not an achievement. It's something that we have to constantly work towards. And so that's definitely one of my 2024 goals is finding a better work life balance and being able to not stress out so much about not doing one little thing that probably no one would notice if I did it a day or two later than I wanted to do it. If you want to talk more about this, I do too. So DM me. Let me know your thoughts. Leave it on Spotify. I always put a little question there. What are your thoughts on this episode? So if you have any thoughts that you want to share, feel free to throw them down in there. I'd love to read them. But let's move on to good climate news. Today's article is about EVs, which are electric vehicles. It's a really cool article. I really just took a snippet here, but let me read you the title of the article. The title of the article is Zero-Emission Vehicles Factbook COP28 edition. I don't feel like that's a good explanation of what the article is about. Here's my little blurb. EVs are on track to make up 15.5% of automotive sales this year. Between battery electric vehicles and plug in hybrids, this new growth means there are almost 41 million passenger EVs on the road, with China having the largest share of EVs in the world, making up nearly a quarter of that global fleet. If you want to read the entire article, you totally can. I'm going to link that below in the show notes. I think it's really amazing to see more EVs. In fact, my fiance and I were just having some fun and looking at different cars on the market, and EVs are definitely a lot more popular. I'm seeing a lot more on the lot and even hybrid cars that I hadn't seen before in the past. And it's been a few years. I got my car back in 2020 when my old car just went kaput. And I felt like just my personal knowledge of cars was very low compared to what it is now. But it's very interesting to know that. So that'll be linked in the show notes for anybody who wants to read more about that. If you want to talk more about this episode, like I said, please DM me. I love hearing your thoughts. It's one of my favorite things to be able to spark more conversation with everyone. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. If you like this, please share it with a friend. If you feel like this was helpful, share it with your mom, share it with your dad, share it with your friend, share it with your coworker, share it around. I feel like that's the best way for people to learn is for someone to be like, hey, I listened to this and I got value out of it. So I think you might get value out of it too. And if you really liked it and you feel like you want to do something nice for me, please leave a review on whatever platform you're listening on. It really means a lot to me. I read every single one and I love to see them. It also really helps the podcast just get discovered by new people. And hopefully one day we will get a sponsor. I would love to have a sponsor by May. That would be about a year of doing this. And I'd love to do that. I think that's one of my goals for 2024. So would love to have that. Okay, guys, that's what I have for this week. Stay tuned for next week. I will see you then. Bye.